It was during the winter semester at a university in the United States. A small group of college students had gathered in a dorm room on a quiet Friday night. Like many typical student nights, music was playing softly, laughter filled the room, and empty bottles slowly started piling up on the desk. Around midnight, the group realized something unfortunate. They had completely run out of alcohol. At first, it didn't seem like a big problem, but the campus area was quiet at that hour, and most nearby stores had already closed. After checking their phones, they discovered the only place still open was a 24-hour supermarket about a mile away. So the group decided to walk. The route was simple. From the dorms, they just needed to follow a long residential road lined with rows of identical suburban houses. The houses all looked almost exactly the same. Small lawns, dim porch lights, and silent streets. At that time of night, the neighborhood felt strangely empty. No cars passing, no people outside, just the sound of their footsteps and the occasional cold wind moving through the trees. About halfway to the store, something unusual appeared ahead. Between two rows of houses, there was an open field, and inside that field, there was a large bonfire burning brightly. At first, the students assumed it was some kind of late-night party, but as they walked closer, they noticed something strange. The scene didn't feel modern. Around the fire were several people dressed in dark, old-fashioned clothing. Some of them were sitting on wooden crates while others stood in a circle around the flames. A few individuals were playing instruments that looked like violins and acoustic guitars, but the music sounded different, slow, almost haunting. What made the scene even stranger was the presence of horses. Two riders slowly circled the bonfire while holding lanterns. The yellow lantern light mixed with the orange glow of the fire, creating long shadows across the field. The entire place looked like something from another century. One of the students joked that it looked like a historical reenactment or maybe some kind of themed event. But no signs or vehicles were visible anywhere. No parked trucks, no equipment, just the fire, the lanterns, the horses, and the music. For a moment, the group simply stood there at the edge of the road, watching. The people around the fire didn't seem to notice them, or if they did, they completely ignored them. After a minute, the students continued walking toward the supermarket, but something about that scene stayed in their minds. Felt wrong. The walk to the supermarket took another 5 minutes, but none of the students were talking much anymore. Finally, one of them spoke. He said the gathering felt strangely out of place, like it didn't belong in that neighborhood at all. The others immediately agreed. Something about the music had sounded unsettling, and the clothing the people were wearing looked like it belonged to a much older time period. Still, they brushed it off. Maybe it was just some unusual private event. They quickly bought what they needed and began the walk back to campus. But as they approached the road where the field had been, curiosity started creeping back into their minds. One of them suggested something simple. Let's go see what they're doing. After all, the fire had looked massive. There must have been at least 20 people there. It would be easy to find. So they turned down the same street again and walked toward the place where the field should have been. But when they reached the spot, they immediately stopped because something was very wrong. The field was gone. There was no bonfire, no lanterns, no music, no horses. In fact, there was no field at all. Instead, the entire area was filled with more houses. Perfectly normal suburban homes, each one with driveways, mailboxes, and small fences. The students stood there in complete silence. They were absolutely certain they had walked down the same road. There had been no turns, no different routes, just a straight path. But the open field they had seen only minutes earlier had completely disappeared. Confused, they walked up and down the street. Then they checked the neighboring roads. Maybe they had made a mistake. Maybe they had misremembered the exact location. But no matter where they looked, there was nothing even remotely similar to an open field anywhere nearby. Every direction showed the same endless rows of houses. That was when the uneasiness turned into something much darker. because all of them remembered the same details: the fire, the horses, the music, the lanterns. None of them had imagined it. The group eventually returned to the dorms, still trying to rationalize what had happened. They hadn't been drunk. They had only started drinking earlier that night, and all three of them had seen exactly the same thing. Over the next few weeks, they occasionally asked other students and local residents about the strange gathering. Most people simply laughed and assumed it was a misunderstanding. But one older resident gave them a very different answer. Decades earlier, long before the houses were built, that entire neighborhood had been farmland. And according to local history, one particular field had been used for community gatherings during the 1800s. People would meet there for celebrations, music, bonfires, horse riding. But the tradition ended after a tragic accident during one gathering. A fire had spread out of control. Several people were killed. And after that night, the land was eventually sold and developed into housing. The story disturbed the students because the gathering they had seen looked exactly like something from that time period. To this day, they still don't know what they witnessed on that quiet suburban road. But one question has never left their minds. If that field had disappeared over 100 years ago, then who exactly were the people standing around that fire? And more importantly, why did the music stop the moment they walked away?